Kensington, on the edge and left behind. In this epic Bruce Springsteen video, Streets of Philadelphia, a crisis facing our nation is depicted. There's a divide in Philadelphia. There are portions of the county which are prospering, but portions of the county which have been left behind. Kensington is one of those areas. Kensington and the surrounding county of Philadelphia were impacted by the post-industrialization patterns of suburban flight and urban decay. While it has seen some increase over the last decade, Philadelphia County's population has never recovered from its high of over 2 million in 1950. And with 42% of the neighborhood's housing units unoccupied, Kensington reflects the portions of Baltimore that were highlighted, particularly in season 4 of The Wire. This is a city which has been left behind. The nation's opioid epidemic led to the heroin epidemic. People using prescription opioids are 40 times more likely to start using heroin than people who do not use opioids. And since 2017, 80% of people who use heroin for the first time had previously used prescription opioids. The county of Philadelphia has the highest overdose rate of any of the 10 largest counties in the United States, and the neighborhood of Kensington is at the epicenter of it, with rates of overdose which far exceed other parts of Philadelphia County. Until 2017, Kensington also hosted an open-air drug market, much like the fictional Amsterdam portrayed in season 3 of The Wire. Much of the open-air drug market bordered the railroad tracks in Kensington. Now I'll pass, As crackdowns on opioid prescribing rates cause physicians to prescribe less frequently or not at all, rates of heroin use begin surging. The widespread use of injection heroin contributes to higher rates of HIV and hepatitis C, issues which can be lessened, if not entirely avoided, through the introduction of safe injection sites and practices, where clean needles can be provided to users. In addition, safe injection sites could safely dispose of used needles rather than leaving them on the streets, playgrounds, or other public spaces. Unintentional overdose is now the leading cause of death in the United States, surpassing car accidents and accidental gun violence. Tens of thousands of people are dying each year, deaths which might be prevented if drug use was transpiring in a safe injection site, or medical technicians with life-saving drugs were on hand to supervise and intervene in the event of an overdose. Now I'll pass it to Courtney.
It is highlighted in The Wire that drugs and crime go hand in hand. These are just a few pictures depicting crime in The Wire that in one way or another are related to drugs, with Bubbles and Johnny stealing copper pipes to sell for money to support their lifestyles, and the Barksdale crew selling drugs in the low-rises. Like depicted in The Wire, crime rates are higher in communities with high rates of drug use, and drug users are more likely to commit crimes such as theft to afford their addiction. A study conducted in London by Jeremy Coyd and his associates studied 221 addicts in a low-income area, 85% of which had self-reported committing crimes to afford their drug addiction, mostly involving theft, drug dealing, sex work, fraud, or other means of obtaining money illegally. 81 of these 221 that were studied through a course of methadone treatment and found that theft was reduced in half and drug dealing was impacted even more. Multiple parallels can be seen between The Wire and Kensington. A big part of improving these areas would be decreasing drug addiction, getting drug use off of the streets, reducing homelessness, and reducing crime rates. Implementation of a Rehabilitation and Recovery Center, or an RCC, in Kensington would help us get these users off the streets and ideally have a cascade effect on the other problems associated with high addiction rates, such as crime, poverty, homelessness, low health statistics, infectious disease rates, and more. Our Rehabilitation and Recovery Center is aimed at comprehensive treatment for addiction. Addiction is a complex problem that will require a comprehensive solution to help addicts not only get sober, but to stay sober. We will work to address various barriers to rehabilitation, starting with the difficulty of fully detoxing and all the way through stability in their home life to help aid in long-term recovery. As an effort for comprehensive treatment, our inputs are designed to address multiple aspects of a recovering addict's life that could cause added stress during an already stressful time of beginning rehabilitation. Addicts may not come to our center for rehabilitation initially. They may come simply for clean needles or a place to safely use, which is okay. We will monitor them to prevent overdose and provide clean needles to ensure safe injection and lower the spread of infectious disease. Our goal with these individuals will be to show them that resources are available to help aid in recovery when they are ready, and most importantly, show them that there is a way out. Cooperation with law enforcement will make our environment a safe place for addicts to come forward to use or seek treatment without fear. When an addict does decide that they'd like to begin rehabilitation, we will be able to offer methadone and other healthcare treatment to facilitate detox and treat their pain. Resources for housing assistance, education assistance, job matching and resources, and nutritional assistance. One of the biggest hopes for our center will be increasing recovering addicts in the community to show other addicts that recovery is possible. All of these inputs for our Rehabilitation and Recovery Center will work in conjunction with each other to increase addicts seeking treatment, improve overall health and wellness, and positively impact the community overall. These inputs and outputs have a very complex relationship with one goal in mind: sustained rehabilitation and recovery for the addicts in Kensington, improving both the addicts' lives and the community.
So how will we pay for this? The biggest part of how we're going to pay for this is to partner with our local partners in the city of Philadelphia. The city of Philadelphia has already supported these type of projects, so we believe sustained funding from them will be able to help sustain the center and get it off the ground. As well as having that dedicated funding will ensure that it pays for things that are harder to go for with private grants, like staffing and administrative costs. We can go after some of big foundations out there looking for innovative solutions like Bloomberg Philanthropies, Walton Family Foundation, and the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. And partnering further with the city of Philadelphia will ensure that enforcement will not be an issue with the city, as we are fully behind it, which gets us to the biggest impediment, which is enforcement. Enforcement of these drug laws that are federally recognized are a major issue. Our local police officers need to follow these regulations, but for this center to work, we need them to not enforce in these locations to allow safe use of drugs and to prevent overdoses. The Department of Justice has a problem with this, and the city will need to work with the department to work that out.
Who are the stakeholders we are discussing? How can we implement a solution where everyone feels as if they're benefiting from what is being proposed? The relevant stakeholders are the community, the non-drug using community, the addicts, the police and law enforcement, and finally, healthcare providers. It's imperative that all these groups work together to help one another and build their solution. Each group has its own set of needs, and the Rehabilitation and Recovery Center, the RRC, need to address those accordingly. Police and law enforcement need to be handled in a way that works with the mission of the RRC, not against it. Buy-in from the community is critical, and with positive results, we will see the benefit of having a community support your effort. Most importantly, we need the healthcare community to work with the addicts in order to provide results that are aligned with the end goals of the RRC. Ideal results will be a drop in addiction and drug-related crime. We want to turn Kensington from a neighborhood of open-air drug markets to a community of people who love their neighborhood again. Maybe that includes real estate and retail development, community centers, and even improved schools and beautified parks. So what are the next steps? As mentioned previously, we need to get the City of Philadelphia and the Federal Department of Justice to work together, even if not formal. Federal legislation is going to be important to make this a sustainable cause. The buy-in from these two organizations is paramount to the success of the RRC. Having the board of directors and participants in the RSC act as intermediaries to get these two organizations in line will help build a path towards success.
We are requesting that the city government helps contribute to the funding of our nonprofit construction costs that will allow us to make a real difference in this community. The RRC will work to gain access to as many state, federal, and private grants as possible. The tax exemption and limited liability that we will incur as a nonprofit will help all employees of the organization remain committed to providing the safest and healthiest environment possible for all of those suffering from addiction. The ultimate goal for our organization is to have a nonprofit that is closely affiliated with the city while still having some access to government funding. Through making a community effort, we have an ability to make a real difference in the lives of those suffering from drug addiction. It is our hope that stakeholders who have the relevant authority will see the need for our creative solutions and be willing to help us take the necessary steps outside of their comfort zone to create real and lasting change. Thank you so much.
Boom.